So, by the way, in order to make Osaka an international relay point where companies, startups, and students, investors, etc. gather, Osaka City has expanded and even strengthened its cooperation with organizations around the world. So far, Osaka City has held events and promoted personnel exchanges, etc., in collaboration with various countries, regions, and cities. They've signed MOUs with France, Shenzhen, China, and Chicago in the United States. Recently, Osaka City and the Action Community for Entrepreneurship, or ACE, a startup support organization in Singapore, signed an MOU to promote cooperation in startup support. So, for now, we're going to show you a brief video from the Senior Manager of Risk Capital and International, Ms. Ang Yan Lin, as she has a message about expectations for Osaka and introductions to Singapore's startup ecosystem. So, let's take a look.
Hi everyone, I'm Yan Ling from Action Community for Entrepreneurship, and I'm pleased to announce the collaboration between ACE and Osaka City Government to support cross-border market access between Singapore and Osaka. Let me give you a brief background on Action Community for Entrepreneurship and how we will be working closely with Osaka City Government in our collaboration. For ACE, we are Action Community for Entrepreneurship, and we are the national voice for the Singapore startup ecosystem. We are supported by government agencies under the Ministry of Trade and Industry Singapore, specifically Enterprise Singapore and JTC. Back in 2003, we're actually a department under Enterprise Singapore to support the Singapore startup ecosystem. But in 2014, we are actually relaunched as a private sector-led non-profit organization to work closely with the private sector players to develop the Singapore startup ecosystem. Currently, our patron is Dr. Tan See Leng, who is the Second Minister for Manpower and Second Minister for Trade and Industry. For ACE, how do we support the Singapore startup ecosystem is by serving 5 key stakeholders, which are startups, corporates, Institute of Higher Learnings, risk capital, and public sector. For startups, we support them with gaining local connections in Singapore to expand their business in Singapore, as well as supporting them in overseas market expansion. Next up is corporate, who have their own innovation team and they're looking for relevant tech startups to scout for. For Institute of Higher Learnings, we support the universities and they play a very key part in the ecosystem as new technologies developed by universities and youth can be effectively adopted and hired in by tech startups. The fourth stakeholder that we support are risk capital, who create a solid supply of viable and scalable startups for investment that reaps good returns. Example of risk capital are your venture capital firms as well as your angel investor. Next up, the last stakeholder that we support is public sector, who are looking to source for innovative startups that can solve various problems such as ways to create a viable economy. I will give a very brief overview of the startup landscape in Singapore. Back in 2012, we have 3,400 tech startups, and since then, this has increased to around 3,600 technology startups in 2019. In terms of investment deal amount and deal count, back in 2012, there is around 80 startup investment deals, which amounts to US $136 million in deal value. And since then, this has increased to around 592 deal counts, which amounts to USD 10.9 billion deal value. In Southeast Asia, there are around 11 unicorns nurtured, and out of which 5 unicorns are either headquartered in Singapore or founded by Singaporeans. An example of unicorn is Razer and Grab, which are based in Singapore and set up by Singaporean founder. Next up for ACE, we are heavily involved in doing corporate open innovation as well. And one example is Coca-Cola. So back in 2018, we actually organized the Bridge Challenge for Coca-Cola to scout for relevant tech startups in the area of marketing, logistics, and data analytics. So we scouted a total of 3 relevant tech startups for them, out of which 2 are based in Singapore and 1 is based in Indonesia. For the VCs, these are some of the VCs that we have engaged. For example, Vertex Venture and Decacorn Capital. For these VCs, they are looking out for relevant tech startups in the region, not just in Singapore, but also overseas startup as well that fits into their investment mandate. So if you are Japanese tech startups looking to expand into Singapore and looking to raise funds in Singapore, you can work closely with Osaka city government and ACE for this piece. Lastly, we have our ACE International Network, which is the largest connected startup ecosystem in the region. We have partnerships with multiple organizations across 20 cities with access to 25,000 startups. For these partnerships, I'm very pleased to announce that we are working closely with Osaka city government to actually have these partnerships to support Osaka startups to expand into Singapore, as well as Singapore startups to expand into Osaka. We look forward to working closely with Osaka city government. Thank you.